Obesity is now a rising health problem in the Philippines, with a staggering 27 million Filipinos considered overweight or obese, according to a 2019 survey by DOST-FNRI. To combat obesity, the government imposed an excise tax on sugar-sweetened beverages under the Tax Reform for Acceleration and Inclusion, or TRAIN law, which was signed in December 2017. However, with sustained inflation, the initial impact of the sugar-sweetened beverage tax has diminished, according to the Congressional Policy and Budget Research Department of the House of Representatives. So the popular question is it timely to increase the sugar-sweetened beverage tax? With this issue, I will talk to Filomeno S. III, a coordinator of Action for Economic Reforms and a columnist for BusinessWorld. He will discuss the importance of protecting the value of the sugar-sweetened beverage tax amid sustained inflation. He will also share his insights on the implications of a higher sweetened beverage tax in combating health problems like obesity and how it can finance other government health programs. Hello, Mr. Santa Ana. Pleasure to meet you. In the latest policy brief of the Congressional Policy and Budget Research Department of the House of Representatives, the initial impact of the sweetened beverage tax has diminished due to sustained inflation. What is your take on this?
I do agree. Inflation rate has been quite high in the past few years, but the tax rate for the sweetened beverage tax is fixed. It's at 6 pesos per volume liter. And so the real value of the 6 pesos since the imposition of the tax has gone down. It has diminished in real terms.
Your organization, Action for Economic Reforms, has been working on a proposal to increase the sweetened beverage tax. Could you provide us with an overview of this proposal?
We take off from the existing sweetened beverage tax. As the Congressional Planning Office said, the real value has diminished. It has eroded. So at the minimum then, we have to recover the value of the 6 pesos for this year and the following years. And hence, we need to adjust the tax rate to inflation. That's the very least that we can do to protect the tax, the value of the tax. Of course, the significance of the tax goes beyond protecting the current tax rate. More importantly, we need new revenues in light of the narrow fiscal space we have, in light of the pressure to spend for very important development projects. I can cite, for example, the problem of nutrition. Government itself wants to increase the budget for the poor piece, particularly to address the nutrition problem. That will require additional resources. So the question is, where do we get the resources? And it is most sensible that such new resources be obtained from a tax like the sweetened beverage tax, given that the sweetened beverage tax is related somehow to the issue of nutrition. The tax on sweetened beverage will reduce consumption of products that result in diabetes and other diseases that lead to obesity. And then we can use the revenues from the tax to finance nutrition programs that address undernutrition, stunting, and the like.
What is the ideal amount or percentage that should be added to the current tax on sweetened beverages, given that the TRAIN law imposes an excise tax of 6 pesos per liter on caloric and non-caloric sweeteners, and 12 pesos per liter on beverages using high fructose corn syrup?
There is one bill sponsored by Congressman Reyes, and it's a simple bill. It increases the tax rate from 6 pesos to 9 pesos. That's already acceptable. Of course, we can push for a higher tax rate, given that we just do not want to address the issue of inflation, but we also want to have additional revenues for health programs, particularly for nutrition. So a rate of higher than 9, perhaps even 12, will be good. A tax structure that will include a feature that will automatically index the tax to inflation is also most welcome. That's very similar to the design of the tax on tobacco and on alcohol.
What is the potential amount of revenue that the government could accumulate if a higher sweetened beverage tax is imposed?
Well, it depends. It depends on the design of the tax rate. It depends on the tax rate itself. At this time, it's difficult to give a revenue estimate there. But it's going to be significant. Even an increase of from 6 to 9 will result in revenues in from 6 to 9 that can result in additional revenues of 10 billion and above.
How will the imposition of a higher tax on sweetened beverages help the country control its rising problem of obesity?
The tax has two objectives. The first is to increase the revenues to address the tight fiscal space that we have right now. The increase in revenues will likewise benefit spending for health, for nutrition. Another objective, and this leads me to the second objective, precisely it is pro-health in the sense that it will reduce consumption of such products that contribute to problems like obesity. This is the type of product wherein a higher price will result in lower demand, but the demand will continue, which will still bring revenues. So we have a double dividend there. Higher revenues and lower consumption of harmful products.
What is your take on the sentiment that imposing a higher tax on sugar-sweetened beverages will be anti-poor?
The idea behind the tax is to reduce consumption of a bad product, and that is also beneficial to the poor. We do not want the poor to be harmed by consumption of products that will result in diseases that the poor doesn't just have the resources when those diseases happen. At the same time, we make sure that the revenues from such a tax will benefit the poor through earmarking for nutrition, target the revenues to increase the grant for example for the poor families. So that's very pro-poor. Have it earmarked for nutrition programs. The current law, in fact, allows that a certain percentage of the tax revenue be allocated to nutrition programs or for health.
Do you see any challenges or setbacks that might hinder the position to increase the sweetened beverage tax?
The first challenge is that the current administration is reluctant to increase taxes of any kind. But our response to that is, well, in the end, the government has to contend with that fiscal space problem. Sooner or later, it will be compelled to look for new revenues, especially in light of a higher demand for spending on public goods, not only for health, but also for education, for infrastructure, for the transition to green energy. So it's better for government to be strategic. That at this point, it can increase some revenues. It can increase taxes. And a tax on sweetened beverage is a popular tax, a surveys do show that health taxes have the support of the people. Another constraint, of course, is the objection of the industry. They will use all sorts of excuses, like saying, well, the poor will be hurt, employment will be hurt. But history tells us, even recent history tells us, those fears did not happen.
Thank you very much for having this interview. Do you have any last statement?
Let's do it. Let's push for the sweetened beverage tax. Let's push for other good taxes. My point here is not all taxes will be harmful to the economy at this time. These taxes will increasing revenues at this time through taxes will be contributing to our GDP growth, will be contributing to an expansion of investments and growth, because our binding constraint right now is the narrow fiscal space, and we can only address that narrow fiscal space mainly through generation of revenues and, of course, a rationalization of government spending.
Our conversation with Mr. Santa Ana highlighted that the government should consider a higher excise tax on sugar-sweetened beverages to offset the impact of inflation on the fixed tax rate. The higher tax would also reduce Filipinos' consumption of unhealthy products, leading to a decrease in obesity-related problems. The revenue from the higher excise tax could be allocated to the government's nutrition-related programs to fight malnutrition and stunting. This has been another episode of B-Side. Again, this is Edge Eva. Subscribe now and enjoy the industry insights on Philippine business and beyond.